So this video is going to be 3 very important and crucial mistakes that you probably still make when you use the bow. If you're the kind of person that feels like whenever you play something, the bow is always fighting against your playing. It's not easy, it doesn't help you, you always get a scratchy sort of tone that doesn't project as far, it doesn't sound like you want it to, you can't phrase how you intend. This video is for you, and these problems are probably a part of what's causing it. And I'm going to provide you with some unique solutions that you may not have heard of before, things that you may not have thought of in order to fix these problems. Because although you may have heard of the problem before, you might be trying to fix it the completely wrong way. And so we're going to start with the fingers and the wrist. Let's start with the fingers and the wrist. So the problem here isn't just the fingers and the wrist themselves. The problem is when you use them to bow. Because what happens to a lot of us is that we find out, okay, you know, our fingers and wrists here, they have to be relaxed, right? They're supposed to be relaxed, they're supposed to be loose, they're supposed to be fluid so that we can do things like this and certain bow strokes that require it. But what happens is if we do this way too much, we bleed it into all our normal strokes. When you play a normal détaché on the instrument, you don't need any of this. And this is something I was doing a lot until, just a few weeks ago when I had it fixed, is that I was bowing from the wrist a lot, from the fingers a lot, especially when I would get to the lower half. And so it's all well and good that you can do this. It means that your fingers are nice and flexible. But you don't need your fingers to be that flexible all of the time. And you need to have the stroke come from your arm, right? When you put the bow on the string and you bow, you see when I go out and in, the elbow here works and the shoulder. The wrist and the fingers, they just follow along. They are flexible, right? But they're not moving themselves. That's the right way, right? Like this. If I can demonstrate the wrong way again. See a lot of this movement. It looks very unserious, I guess, is a good way to put it. It looks unserious. I don't really like that explanation because I always think looks unserious, like that doesn't matter. I don't care what it looks like. But I think it is a good way to explain it, that sort of bowing like this. It's lifting fingers, it's putting fingers down, it's flopping around with the wrist. It looks unserious and it does make an unserious sort of sound. It makes a sound that doesn't quite have a core to it and doesn't quite have the basis of what we need to actually make a good sound on the instrument in all these strokes. Especially if you play something you can see that if you did that with the wrist, it's just not quite the sound you want. Now I'm demonstrating it with no vibrato or anything. Of course, when you actually played, you would. But all of the strokes, the purpose of this, the main idea of this point, is that all the basic strokes, your martelet, your détaché, these things should come from this arm movement here. Your hand should be relaxed and loose, but not moving independently on its own. The movement should come from here and here, okay? So that's the first big mistake to fix in your playing. The second one we have is crossing strings. Again, this is a similar sort of deal, but different in some ways. The idea is that you should practice really deliberately crossing strings, deliberately changing the the level of your elbow to each string, right? As you can see. Sometimes we cross strings, we do a little bit of this, right? When you play this. Right? Something like that. Or other movements of Bach or other sorts of pieces like that, passages like that, that have a little bit of this rotational element, not a full string crossing. But that shouldn't compensate, that shouldn't be used to make up for a lack of an actual string crossing. The actual string crossing should always be the foundation. Just like in the last point, where your arm should be the actual foundation of your bow movement, the wrist and fingers just an extension of that, not moving on their own unless they need to. Same here. You should always the string crossing should be from the elbow level changing. And it's quite a significant change when you actually do it deliberately. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this before. You need to cross with your elbow. Make sure you cross the strings. But I think one thing to go a point above this, a point higher of actual useful advice, is that I think of it as an idea of balance. I think the idea of balance with this is really, really important to actually make sure you've gotten the string crossing. So what happens is that the feeling of drawing the bow, this feeling out, in, when we draw our bow across the strings, that should actually remain the exact same balance, the exact same feeling across all of the 4 strings. And so if you think of that now like that, if I went here and I move my wrist only, I can play here fine, but it's a different feeling. How I get the same feeling is I do this. Cross. See the elbow? Cross. Anticipate with the elbow. Cross. Because now it's the exact same feeling. It's the exact same balance, right? You can feel it here. You can feel the balance of the bow. And you'll feel when it's off balance. And balance is such a major factor in having a good sound. The sound, it's hard to make a bad sound if your bow is balanced, right? If I put the bow on the string, and I always balance it like this, I can dig in, I can press down, I can go as fast as I want. I can go as fast as I want, I can go as slow as I want. It's hard to make a scratchy, bad tone when you're balanced. And so this is really, really important, because if you don't make this motion of string crossing and balance a complete fundamental habit of your playing, then eventually when you have a passage with string crossing after string crossing, you will mess something up. Because string crossings cannot be something that you think about. You cannot get away with having to think about string crossings in a piece, because you cross strings so much. It needs to be just there, just like that in every single piece you play. It needs to be a thing that happens. And so to make it into that habit, that requires a lot of practice and a lot of thinking deliberately about these fundamentals. So you would play etudes, your kreutzer, cross, put a break at cross. Yes, don't play. You see, that's the bad way. Didn't cross. 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 Or here. Cross. 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 So, if you practice like that and you really, really intentionally cross, I promise you, almost immediately, if you do that every day for about a week, you'll feel that something here starts to work a bit better. You don't know what it is, you can't quite put your finger on it, but it just works. Everything works a little bit better when you play, when you cross the strings. When you play any passage. something just starts to work. So that is point 2, string crossing. So the first one was to make sure that the major movement of your bowing comes from the arm, right here, this. Not here, not here. This should be loose, but not move on its own. And then that point, string crossings, to really, really deliberately cross with the elbow. Always cross, and maintain a balance. Cross and maintain a balance, right? Because if you don't maintain a balance, the sound will get messed up. And you can only do that with the elbow. You see, when I cross with the elbow, the bow will always stay balanced. And it's the same feeling of drawing when you go down, up, down, up. That feeling is the same on every string because you cross. Then, our last point that we're going to go over in this video is your bow is not straight. Now, I'm sure this is going to be something that everyone and their grandmother has heard. People who don't play the violin know that your bow is supposed to be straight on the string. And it's not quite true. It's not quite exactly true. But it is the case most of the time, and it's good as a default. It should be your default that your bow goes straight across the string. Oh, sorry. I've been sick the past week, to be honest. I'm not sure why. I think maybe it was the weather. Someone suggested it could be the weather because it's like freezing cold outside, and now we've turned the heating on, so it's fine in here. Then it goes down really low at night. There's snow on the mountains that you can see some days. Not today. But anyway, back to the video. Bowing straight and not straight is an interesting topic. And how you bow straight is not actually by just looking and trying to keep your bow straight, make sure it's straight. It's much easier to understand the movements required to bow straight and think about those rather than just thinking about the straightness of the bow. And so how we do that is we put the bow on the string, we check that it's straight. I have a mirror. No, I don't think you can see. Just out of frame on the edge of my case, there's a mirror right there. And I practice in that. I stare at that mirror and make sure everything is perfect all the time. But what happens is you put the bow on the string, you check that it's straight, right? Straight meaning parallel, parallel with the bridge. That's straight. Then, when you take a down bow, every time you take a down bow, you go out. And out means that you go this way. Out means that you go this way when you bow. Okay, so out. Oh, man. I'm gonna have to cut this out or something. Or maybe I won't, and I'll just keep it in. Can I survive to the end of the video? I think I'll be fine. So you put the bow on the string, right? And as you go with your arm, remember, not with the wrist, not with the fingers, you make sure you go that way. I'll do it extreme. Extreme example is like this. Out, out. So your down bow should always go this direction. Your up bow should always go in this direction. Out, in. And so thinking that you need to always be going out on a down bow and always be going up on an in bow. In bow? In on an up bow. Yeah, God. In on an up bow means that your bow will always be straight. So you need to consider, you need to look in the mirror and make sure it's straight. But you need to think every time down, out, this way. Not too much, just a little. Out, aha, in, out, in, out. See, if I didn't do that and I just said straight, it would be like this. this, and you get, it's very hard to do, really, to just try to keep it straight. But out, in is much easier. Out, in, out, in. And so if you bow like that, you can much more easily keep your bow straight. Now, because I am just the greatest YouTuber of all time, I'm going to give you a bonus tip, and that is this beautiful book right here, Kreutzer 42 Studies for Violin. And so this tip is going to be about how to practice these techniques. So the obvious answer is just practice it on etudes, practice it on scales, practice it on passages from Bach, practice it on any passage you have in a piece, right? So, I don't know, what's a passage in a piece? If you have a big scale in a piece that goes... Oh, that was a weird scale, wasn't it? But if you have a passage in a piece that you can use that has straight semiquavers or quavers or triplets, you can use that. The idea is you need to go for perfection. You need to go for 100%, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a new habit of what happens in our playing. And we can't do that with 50% sort of half trying repetitions of this. You need to make sure that everything is perfect. And this is really, really, really hard to do, right? It is absolutely the most mentally draining, painful activity you could do to practice this way, but it's the only way to actually get the benefit out of it. The good side, right, of it being painful and boring is that it's actually a lot more efficient. You actually have to do a lot less practice if you practice it properly this way. That way you could actually make a change in your technique rather than getting stuck in the way you're playing. And so what you would do is you try to play through an etude, and I think a good goal to achieve is to get every bar perfect. Not the whole thing flawlessly, but if you mess up in a bar, go back to the start of the bar and go again until you can get that bar correct. Until you can get that bar. If you can't get it right, break it down into a smaller group. Try to get 4 notes right at a time. 4 notes perfect before you make a mistake, and try to get every 4 notes. And then try come back the next time and expand to 8 notes and then 16. Because you don't want to be able to do this sometimes. You probably think, if you've gotten this far, you may be thinking, okay, yeah, I know all this already, right? Some of it's simple, it's easy stuff. But it's not easy to do all the time. And that's what separates the good violinists from the ones that just sort of are all right or half know what they're doing, is that the ones that are all right, when they try really hard, they can get this stuff done some of the time. The ones that are really good, it's automatic and it's always there, right? This is one of the sort of unfortunate truths of playing violin as, you know, in an industry or as a professional career, is that they say you're only as good as your last concert. And it's true in a lot of ways, in that you can't afford for the difference between your best day and your worst day to be that far. It's not about making your best day better and better and better. It's about making your best day better and better and better, and your worst day better. Your worst day can't be bad. Your worst day cannot be bad ever. And this is how you make that happen. This is how, when you walk on stage and you're really nervous, or you're really tired, or you really don't want to play, this is how you make it work in those times. Because you really, really drill in and build up those fundamental habits that you need to always play at your best and always play how you want to sound, whatever kind of music you want to make, whether that's soloist, as a quartet, in an orchestra, whatever it is. This is how you do it. It's by building these fundamental habits. And these things seem so basic, but they're the reason these great violinists can do what they do. So that's all for the video. If you would like, the Practice Principles course and community is ready. The link is in the description below. You'll find our practice principles course, which is basically a little course of me going over everything I know about practicing. It's about the mindset you should have while you're practicing. It's about little tips and tricks, hacks that you can use while you're practicing to make things more efficient, to learn faster. It's all of that. We also have another section which I love. I mean, it's been quite painful to make because it's so big, but the section is the library, and it essentially has all of the repertoire you need to know. So all the concerti, all the chamber music, all the trios, the quartets, the quintets, the sextets, the septets, the not... it doesn't... No, we don't have any septets. I need to fix that. But it has all the violin repertoire you need to know, that you should know as a violinist. It has a bunch of violinists that you should know. And I guarantee you, if you're in there and you go through all those violinists, one of them will be your new favorite violinist for at least a little bit. You know, when you just found out about a new violinist and you're like, this is like the most amazing thing ever. How does this guy play like that? That will happen. I can guarantee that if you get down into the practice principles course down below. We also have a masterclass library in there, but I've talked about it enough. So I'll let you guys go and explore for yourselves. If you're not interested in that, happy practicing, and I hope you learned something.